Dostoevsky said, "We're responsible for each other's sins." And I'm trying to understand what that means for why we feel guilt. Because all of us sometimes, and sometimes more often than sometimes, has this feeling of guilt. And I was thinking about it. How many times we broke the promises to ourselves? How many times you promise to yourself to do something but never did? How many times it happened? And when it happened, you stop trusting yourself. Your mind, in some sense, misalign with your body and create such a cognitive dissonance within itself. And suddenly you don't know who you are. That's what religion is so beautiful, because religion helps you to practice consistency, because you have faith in God and you have certain religious practices that you do with consistency every single day, like prayer, for example. It helps you to create consistency within yourself and align back your mind and your body. And suddenly you start feeling less guilt. Because if you look at atheism, if you look at the West right now, why it's crumbling with a strange guilt within so many people. So many people even can't describe their own guilt. What happened is they rejected God. They rejected religion outright because so many of them believe they're too smart for that. And rejecting religion, they need something to substitute it. That's what we are. We always need something. There's no victories. There's only trade-offs. And you always trade something for something. And when they rejected religion, when they rejected religious practices, they start looking for something else. And this guilt within them is something that created by inconsistency in people's behavior. People became comfortable. People became so comfortable in their existence, they forgot about their spiritual struggle. And they think, most of them think it's something that can be cured through vices, through medications, through many other irrelevant things that actually numb you. That's why we have so much addiction to alcohol, to drugs, to pornography, to promiscuous lifestyle. We stop understanding the idea of discipline. We think about motivation, but what is motivation? It's just something that makes you feel right in the moment. But after 5-10 minutes, you don't feel this way, and therefore your motivation is gone. Discipline is the key, because discipline creates consistency in your behavior. With this consistency, you can achieve pretty much everything, especially in now, this time in America, in such a prosperous time, inside of such a prosperous country. But what happened is, people feel this guilt because they try to numb themselves with food, with medication, with many other vices. And what happened, for example, when you have faith in God, when you practice religion, you have this intimacy between you and God. You don't have to practice in public, although it's a good way to go to church and to meet people and to create this strength inside of the community. But you also can practice yourself when nobody sees. And you create this, in some sense, individual within yourself that you can trust, that you can rely on, because you are your own self. And if you cannot rely on yourself, who can you rely on? Because you the pinnacle, you the center of your own life, of your own existence. And what happens is, if you don't have faith in God, how are you supposed to create your own self? From what? From what you can create this consistency, this alignment between your body and your mind. And what happened? You prone to ideological indoctrinations. Because what happened is, people try to convince you through such ideological ideas that you have to comply with certain things to become consistent in a new way. And you sometimes even don't recognize that's all ideological insanity where you worship new ideological dogmas, nothing else but your desire to have religion. But the problem with this, when you part of ideology, you're part of the mob. And you have to confess not to God as individual, but you have to confess to a mob. You have to confess your guilt to a mob. And that's the problem. That's a bad kind of confession, because what they do, they hijack your feeling of guilt as the result of your inability to be consistent with yourself, and what they force you to confess your guilt publicly by always confirming to their ideas of new progressive modes that they put outside almost every single day, because you have to support what they tell you to support, and any deviation punishable almost by mental death, because they literally reject you. They want to delete you from online world and make you as unnoticeable as they can possibly can, because you can lose your job, you can lose your social media accounts, you can lose your friends, you can lose your spouse, you can lose your kids, because you're absolutely involved in this ideological indoctrination. But you need this. There's only two options. There's no third option. There's religion that helps you to become independent in some sense by practicing your consistency with God, with your belief in God. Also, it helps you to build stronger family. Or if you don't believe in God, you have this ideological indoctrination where you have to follow certain rules of new ideology that always propagate itself online. That's why a lot of people, they look at their void inside of them and they try to find something to fill this void. But it's not so simple. That's why they look at the people and they jump to defend criminals. They jump to defend policies that actually hurt them. They let certain people inside their countries and almost subjugate themselves toward those people, toward those cultures, without even questioning, because the questioning of those cultures, of those ideas, of those people became racism, and people terrified to be called racist. And the problem is, there's literally, the word was redefined so badly that it became just like in before, people call somebody like witches, the witch hunt. Now it's a racist hunt. They hunt racist. And if you deviate slightly from any position, you are racist. And the problem with this, when you believe in God and when you're disciplined and consistent in your faith in God, and then you're consistent with yourself, you have position in the world because you stand behind yourself. With ideology, you cannot stand behind yourself because you don't have self. You have a mob that dictate you how you're supposed to stand and where you're supposed to stand and when you're supposed to bend your knee. Because that's another thing. You have to bend your knee not because you believe in cause, but because the mob tells you so. And it doesn't matter if it's ridiculous. It doesn't matter that you bend your knee because of the criminal, because of something really bad, but you have to support this unquestionably. That's why in some sense all ideologies, they lead people to extremes, because they always need confirmation that you support this particular ideology, and it's getting more and more and more ridiculous. You can make comparison with the Soviet Union when, for example, people supposed to disown your parents, disown your children, destroy completely their life, and almost commit intellectual suicide every single day by rejecting common sense out of their life. Because it's necessary for ideology. That's how it's imposed itself upon people. You cannot think, because if you think, you start realizing there's something is wrong. That's what's happening right now in the West in some sense, because people rejected God and embraced ideology. And now this ideology forces them to such extremes that they are ready to welcome wolves and be eaten by them. And not only that, they have to praise this. And that's what's happening right now. And for us to be able to stop it, we have to understand that, first of all, it's interesting thing that people claim that all cultures are equal, but they keep abusing the Western culture. All religions are good, but they keep abusing Christianity. All people are great, but only white people are horrible. It seems like this constant abuse, because we should stop being atheist. We should come back to faith, come back to God, come back to consistent practice of our religious ways of living. Otherwise, we're not going to have position. And that's what I think Dostoevsky meant when he said in his one of the greatest books, Brothers Karamazov, that we in some sense are all responsible for each other's sins. Or we take responsibility for ourselves through God and start fixing ourselves, our families, our communities, our countries. Or we reject God, and with God we reject our own selves and give ourselves away as a sacrificial lamb toward other people's religious beliefs, ideologies, or simple ideas of life.